I will let her do that herself. So my first question for her, who is Chief Master Sergeant JOANNE Bass?
Awesome. Well, first off, let me just say thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First off, let me just say thanks so much for allowing me to come here and spend some time. My mom is Korean, by the way, but she's married to a Filipino. So we eat good in my house. And so I have to say that because when my whole family heard I was coming to talk here, they're like, you know, like, why? And I said, because leadership is leadership.
Right.
It doesn't matter where, and who. And so, Marlon, I'm going to kind of do something in advance because I really do want to thank you for your leadership too. And the fact that you're leading this association with a lot of the Air Force leadership skills that we have given you and that we've given this group of folks. I tell people all the time, it's not my Air Force. This is America's Air Force. This is your Air Force. And so we have poured into Marlon and given him skills. He's been in the United States Air Force Reserve for almost 15 years. He doesn't have to because we don't pay that much. Like, let's be real. But he does it so that these airmen who are here represent something higher than ourselves. And when you think about the notion that we have a free and prosperous nation, it's because of folks like them. So I'm going to give them my point. That means you actually have to be good the rest of the hour. So this is my personal challenge coin that has, you know, our Air Force values, which are integrity, service, and excellence. But it also has my personal values and focus areas, which were people, readiness, and culture. And so I want to say thank you for your strong leadership to your Air Force family, but also to this Filipino family and the nurse family. And if he drops it or he doesn't have it, by the way, you can Google what a challenge point is. That means he owes you drinks. So, there you go.
One of the other things too is when you're around the table and everyone else has a coin, the highest ranking coin wins. So now I have a Chief Master Sergeant.
So back to the question, who's Joe Bass? By the way, I'm retired, so just Joe is perfect. You know, I grew up as a military brat. My dad immigrated here from Germany many years ago, and then he joined the United States Army as a possible opportunity and a way of life. He met my mom in Korea. They came back to the States, and because I have, you know, two hardworking parents, both previous immigrants, and a Korean mom, hard work was always in the blood. How many of y'all know hard work, right? And you gotta reach that glass ceiling. Like, Asian parents don't play. So, right? So, you know, I grew up as an Army brat. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. We grew up very old school. My parents were not gonna pay for college. And I remember my dad always saying, 4 years in the military never hurt anybody. And so I'm wondering what 4 years, because every year kind of hurts. So, but I thought I would join the Air Force, do 4 quick years, get a GI Bill, get some college, and figure out life. And then at the 4-year mark, I had to pay off my Honda Civic, and so I said, okay, I'll do 4 more years. And then I started to really understand what it meant to wear our nation's cloth, what it meant to serve in our military. I served with some amazing individuals who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. And so it was really assignment after assignment, job after job, that 4 years turned into 8 years, turned into 31 years. And I retired in 2024 out of the Pentagon. And it was really an honor and a privilege to serve as a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, where I was able to help advocate for our almost 700,000 airmen and their families, but also help the trajectory of the United States Air Force, because if we continue, by the way, we have the strongest Air Force in the world, period, dot. The United States military broadly, all branches of service, is the strongest in the world, but we can't rest on our laurels, and we can't assume that in 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, or 50 years from now, it's gonna be the same. It takes work. It's no different than the nurse corps. I love that you all have a pipeline, that you're growing this next generation of leaders, because that is what we have to do. And so I'm very honored to have served in the military to help change the trajectory. And then one just quick fun story about the significance of the Asian thing. When you know, the selection process for Chief Master in the Air Force was really long. It was about 4 months and lots of interviews by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And I remember in June of 2020 when the Air Force finally announced that I was going to be the next Chief Master in the Air Force. I was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base. I was in charge of all of training in the Air Force as the chief there. And when the Air Force announced it, it became news. I was just a normal chief doing what I do, but immediately media takes control, and the media that day was, oh, she's the first female. She's the first Asian. So we don't put those titles on us. Sometimes it's just the title that we have. And then immediately our office, my exec came up to me and said, Chief, I've got all these media outlets calling me, and they want to know what kind of Asian are you? And I'm like, don't answer, we don't have media training, we don't know what's going on. But I did hear that, you know, there was a website in the Philippines created for me, and you know, and every time I take pictures with our Filipino airmen, they bring a Filipino flag, and I just sign it. And so anyway, it's a thing.
So I do want to piggyback on what you said. I claimed her as Filipino when I first heard that she was appointed as the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. So I was telling a lot of people that I will invite her to the BNAA convention in 2020 or 2021. Our conventions back then were still virtual, COVID time, remember? I sent her an email and I said, I want to invite you, being that you're the first female and Filipino who've been appointed to this position.
And I think it was Dr. Tucson
Oh,
who said,
yes.
she's not Filipino. But that's okay, because we're family. It doesn't matter what it is. But I brought my auntie, so I brought Tita Lynn with me as backup. And then the other funny thing, and I think it was March Air Force Base. I came to the hospital and I did a tour, and that's where he's stationed.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, there was a small Filipino girl working there, a med tech. And I walk around to the, you know, my team is doing a visit, and she was so excited to see me because she said, Chief, I feel like you make it possible for little girls, for me to see themselves. But she didn't call me Chief, she called me Ate, and I said,
I even argued with him. He said, she's not Filipino. I said, no, she is. I'm 100% sure she is. So now at least we know that there's a connection.
But now I am. Now I am. And I'm going on that cruise next year. Filipinos know how to party.
I think the president of BNA Hawaii is here, so she just recorded that statement. You will get an invitation for sure. All right, great, lovely conversation. We should give you more context. So going back to your leadership journey, so you described what that was for her. What are the pivotal experiences that shaped your leadership philosophy? And maybe you already mentioned some of those philosophies on the coin. Maybe you could just tell us more about those.
You know, I always talk about my mom because her leadership principles, and you don't realize it when you're growing up with your parents, but your parents really do instill a lot of the character. And so I remember my mom always said, do your job and do it well.
Yeah.
So that is like literally when Airman asked me, how do you become Chief Master on the Air Force? You do your job and you do it well. Doesn't matter if you're the most junior person, doesn't matter if you're an SVP, doesn't matter if you're the director at a hospital, you have to do your job and do it well. And so I would say that foundation stayed with me. But the other part that I think is very important, which is why I really appreciated seeing your framework of MILE, is, leadership doesn't just happen. It takes reps and sets. And so you really do have to have the reps and sets. And so early in my career, my ability to learn from those experiences helped build for the next opportunity. And those experiences help build for the next opportunity. And what I learned is any challenge or setback that we have is really a setup for your next opportunity. And so it's just how you think about things. So my philosophy has always evolved, but it stayed true to some core principles.
I love that. I hope you're all taking notes. Joe and I agree that we will cut our questions shorter because we do want to engage the audience. So if you have questions, please start writing them down. We will have an opportunity for all of you to be able to ask those questions. Next, we're moving on to our next topic, which is leadership in complex organizations. Military is very complex. At least for the Air Force. Don't ask me about the Navy or the Army. I will not be able to tell you what they have. But we have squadrons, we have groups, we have wings, and we have the Air Force, right? You see that in healthcare organizations as well. We have several layers. Even within PNAA, we have chapters, we have committees. So very complex organizations. So Joe, what leadership principles remain constant regardless of the size or the complexities of these organizations?
Yeah, that's really what I shared with my family when they always say, why are you going to speak at this event? It's really because leadership principles don't change. They consist of trust. Like if people have to trust you, and trust doesn't happen overnight. It's built in the reps and sets, it's built in the small decisions, it's built in every single one of us leading. I think that is foundational. And practicing and being good at what you know. You've got to be confident. You've got to be confident as a leader. Is really, I think, key in understanding the diverse organizations.
And in relation to diverse organizations with multiple layers, you are at the headquarters level. So how do you make yourself visible to the squadron level?
For most of us as leaders, we grow up in a pipeline where we have that experience, and as leaders, it's important to stay connected somehow to be able to hear what's going on at the most lowest levels. I used to tell our leaders all the time, the higher in leadership you go, the less truth you actually know about an organization. When you are sitting at that level, you don't know the ground truth of what's going on, so how are you opening yourself up to understand that? For me, when I served at the Pentagon, even before the Pentagon, I believe in reverse mentoring, and I love reverse mentoring. I would have breakfast or lunch with our most junior people, and I would create an atmosphere where they can tell me anything. What is going on in our organizations? What are you hearing? How can we do things better? And so having the connective tissue, but also as a leader, because your time is limited and you don't have time to be everywhere and anywhere, you have to really have strong connective tissue with all the different layers, especially the layer below you, And you have to demand and hold them accountable that they have connective tissue with the layers below them. That's the people piece. The other thing that I think when it comes to communicating in large, diverse organizations is we have to capitalize on the digital domain, the information era. Like, you can have a lot of people who say, well, I don't do social media, or I don't do, the internet or whatever. Your people do. And so we have an opportunity to communicate more flat, because that is very important. And I think, email is one way, that's fine, but we have to assume that most people aren't gonna read their email. So we saw it today. So how do we get the information out there in different, unique ways? I say we ask some of our younger folks in the back, and we ask them, how do we communicate to the entirety of the organization?
So I see there's a lot of support for that statement. I want to go back to what you said earlier, where you make yourself visible during your visits to different wings and headquarters, and then you have, and I've seen this at March Air Reserve Base, where you might have lunch or dinner with airmen. How do you create a safe space? Because you are way up here, and then the airman's way down here, and maybe like me, I'm looking up at you, those airmen are looking up at you, and are afraid to speak up because you are way up here. So can you just give us an idea or share how you create that space?
One of the other principles that I always wanted to hold true to, and I put this in a plaque in my office at the Pentagon, and it's still in a plaque in my office at home, and it says, never forget where you came from. So if you never forget where you came from, then you're never gonna not be able to relate to the folks that you're spending time with. So I think that that's important. Here's what I'll also say for all leaders, because everybody's different, and most people think I'm an extrovert, but that's not true. This is exhausting. After this, I'm gonna go sit somewhere and drink my coffee, because how many of y'all are introverts, and it takes a lot of, that's okay, but then you put teammates around you who have some of that energy. My boss, C.Q. Brown, who served as the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and then the Joint Chiefs, he tells everybody he was an introvert, but he also hired a chief who could help share the message to the entirety of the force, because this is where we have to go. So there's different ways, different resources on ways to communicate. But again, I tapped into the young folks in the United States Air Force, and I said, help us understand how to communicate with this generation.
I remember our wing commander shared the story of why the U.S. Air Force is the greatest Air Force in the world. And that is because we listen to our airmen. This Air Force is not run by the generals. We actually go all the way down and listen to their suggestions. We have a lot of innovation projects in the Air Force coming from the ground, from the troops up to our generals. So we have to really thank you for doing all of that for us. I'll flip the question. So I asked earlier how you create the space. What would be your suggestions for nurses or airmen who are here who are afraid to speak up? How do you encourage them to be able to use their voice?
Yeah, I think if you work on becoming the expert and the master of your trade, and you're confident and competent in what you're talking about, there's nothing that you can't say. You just have to have the wisdom on when and how to say it. And so I encourage young leaders all the time, don't let rank or don't let your role or responsibility dictate the knowledge that you have up here. Because if you're in the room, then we expect you to share what you know so that the organization can be better, the team can be better. You've just got to use your voice. But you feel more comfortable if you're more prepared and you know what you're actually talking about. And so that's for all of us. So a segue to that question.
What advice do you have for leaders who want to advocate for change? Now that they've found their voice, but they want to maintain relationships.
You know, I said it in the previous question, and I learned this lesson a long time ago because I've never been short of opinions, right? Growing up with a Asian mom who always let me have it. Like, I always had an opinion about everything. And when I was a young junior airman, I remember having an opinion about stuff. And I had an older chief master sergeant who told me, hey, you can say anything you want to say, you just got to figure out how and when. And so if you're wise enough to do that, you're wise enough to figure out the allies to help you impact that change, or you're wise enough to understand that some things take time, or you're wise enough to understand that maybe you don't have all the information at hand, and that maybe it's not now, but maybe it's going to be in a year from now that you stay persistent. So I would say that, but regarding change, if I can just offer one thing, has anybody read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There? I see some folks say yes. It's a fantastic book, by the way, a book that I got when I was a kind of mid-level leader. But what it taught me to do was, you know, you have a lot of leadership books that teach you how to be a good leader. I actually need some leadership books to also teach me what not to do. And it was really impactful, but more importantly, when I got into the position at the Pentagon for the second time, what I shared with our Air Force, because we are America's, because we're the world's greatest Air Force, there's a sense of, like, we're good, we're fine. We're gonna continue being the greatest Air Force. And what I had to share with all of our airmen broadly is, hey, what got us here as an Air Force will not necessarily get you there. Just like that book. Times are changing, technology is changing, the character of warfare in our business is changing, the geopolitical environment for our nation is changing. You know, climate change is changing, like you can go on and on. America and our world is at an inflection point in history where we really have to think deeply about change. And that includes the work that you all do. Like, our world is changing, but you, the nurse corps, are in such a position that we cannot afford not to have nurses. We can't afford not to have, yes, and as technology change, as crises come and go, all of that, like, we've got to focus on how do we continue being strong as a nurse corps? How do we have a strong pipeline? Because the world is at an inflection point where what we can't worry about is, do we have the healthcare community that's going to be ready and able for when we need it? We don't know when that need is, but we need you ready. And so, and it goes for the Air Force. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to think differently at how do we make sure we're able to defend our nation, you know, in the future years. And that means we better be open to change. And that doesn't mean change for change's sake, but what things do we hold true to, and what things do we need some of our younger folks who think differently help us figure out how to get there.
And we do see that. Part of the work that we have done that's continuing on to the current Air Force, we do see that, the voice, the encouragement for any rank to be able to contribute. Like I said earlier, we have several programs on innovation that they've opened up to all ranks. On your coin, you have the word culture, at least.
Yeah.
So how do leaders shape culture? When they inherit an organization, listen to this, be an AA. When they inherit an organization with long-standing traditions and practices.
So I love tradition and heritage and history and we love that in our Air Force, but we can't love it more than what is best for an organization to move forward. And so to that, as a leader, when you come into an organization, how do we maintain some of the things things that we really think are first principles and we want to continue doing, and it doesn't, hurt the organization, but how do we have open eyes, again, what got you here won't get you there, how do we have open eyes on what our organization needs to look like moving forward? One thing I used to share with all leaders is the greatest thing that you can bring with you every single day to work is a climate of trust and connection and opportunity. And so when leaders come in and they start to set cultures, because culture is not set at the top. I used to tell people all the time, like, people don't get out of the Air Force because the Chief Master of the Air Force. They usually, when you talk to anybody and they typically leave and quit their jobs, they don't actually quit their jobs or their organizations, they typically quit their boss. Right there, frontline level leader. And so the culture that matters most is the culture at the lowest level of where those people are working. And that's the culture that we really have to develop in our pipeline, those frontline leaders, to create a culture where people can thrive and be their very best. That is the culture that's why in the military, I pride the military so much, because nobody does leadership development the way the United States military does. We educate and develop 100% of the workforce, because we know that if we can impact our frontline leaders, it just trickles upward, and we understand leadership development in a way that nobody else does.
So we cannot talk about culture without talking about diversity. And then most of us here know that diversity is not just related to ethnicity, right? So, Joe, how was your experience leading a diverse force shape your understanding of inclusive leadership?
But before I answer that, I have to say one thing about culture too, just to be fun, because I get serious when it comes to leadership. But let me tell y'all something. If you want to impact culture within an organization, feed your people. If you really want to bring your people in, feed them lumpia. I think I've been happy Air Force lumpia. That's why everybody's so happy. Like, culture. I used to tell leaders all the time, I am serious that when I talk to other leaders, when I was in the Pentagon and everybody's got to manage their resources and nobody wants to share, right? Sometimes the answer is no, 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 no. I'm like, you just need to share a meal. You just need to feed somebody. You need to have a cup of coffee. Like, better decisions and collaboration is made when you break bread. I'm telling you. And never underestimate lumpia. Hey y'all, I used to have an official website, by the way. I passed it on to the next Chief Master of the Air Force. And we would, like we're trying to communicate to the whole force, all the airmen and their families. And if I put out really good doctrine on this is how we stay strong as an Air Force, like nobody's reading it. Like, we might have like 20 likes out of millions. But let me put some lumpia up on there. Like, I do a lumpia post and everybody is, stronger Air Force.
As long as you don't run your 5K run the next day.
Yes, but okay, back to the question.
Let me say something about lumpia though. So true story. The weekend before this conference, I was at our drill, and we threw a sort of a picnic to honor some of our members who will be deploying soon, and Lieutenant Colonel Short is one of them. She's here with us, so we honored them with a picnic. And we had a food truck. We brought in a food truck with burgers and hot dogs, and then on a little table here was a box of lumpia. The lumpia was done in 3 minutes.
What was your question?
we were talking about.
And I want to hear from them. How can the audience also ask questions?
Can you please use Google app so you can have have your question and then we can read it for them, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just like, pop in.
Perfect.
It's a little bit an older audience, so if they can. I registered and I can get like 20 messages. I'm like, it's overwhelming. So if
Actually, there's
if-
6 questions
okay,
already.
I was gonna say, if not, you can come here, we'll give you the microphone.
So you have one question. So the first question, what are the steps? Well, these are mostly applicable for chapters. So probably have this one. What strategies help nurse leaders build trust? Well, that's already across multidisciplinary teams. But we kind of answer it in a complex organization. So I guess we'll do with this one. What possible strategies can be offered to early career nurses which focuses on long-term retention and feel the sense of belonging aside from the salary that can be offered? So I guess not just giving them lumpia, and then you just mentioned about them leaving because of their boss, right? But more of like, let me transition that on how do you encourage people to really stay and be engaged in the organization?
I think training and development cannot be underscored, right? Like, if you have strong leadership pipelines and people understand where they can go, and again, this doesn't matter what career you're in. People just want to know what are next steps, or what other opportunities do they have. Even if maybe they love this one thing, that's okay. As a leader, you want to support that, but also, again, have pipelines on ways to go explore different opportunities and have a pipeline to lead to wherever else. I think that's helpful with retention. But you hit it on the head, right? It's really the culture piece, it's the opportunity to grow, it's the family community connectedness, and really it's also a sense of purpose. For most of our service members who wear a uniform, and probably for many of you, you leave if you don't have a sense of purpose. If you don't feel like you're contributing to something bigger and better, then you leave, and so I think that's important.
So I do know we have a lot of questions on Huga, but I'll take a risk, and I know my people. So I will open up the microphone if there's anyone here who wants to ask a question. Please do not share your dissertation. When you get the microphone, ask the question, introduce yourself, ask the question so that we will have time for other questions.
Thank you so much for saying that leadership is leadership. So there is actually a recent news that says 12 veteran utilization review nurses at the Montefiore Medical Center in Bronx, New York were laid off and had their responsibilities shifted to AI-powered software. So the national implication is, it's saying here advocates and labor leaders are keeping a close eye on the Montefiore dispute, as it is viewed as a high-profile test case that could set a national precedent for how artificial intelligence is implemented in healthcare.
What I would say on the AI piece, because you can't go into any meeting or any conference and not talk about this topic, is that again, we're at an inflection point where even your executives and decision makers really have to take a step back and understand the decisions that we're making. So many of y'all saw this with Ford, I think it was Ford, where they relieved many of their scientists and then realized, oh no, we need them back, and now they've got to pull them back. So as leaders and decision makers or influencers, we really have to caution our leaders to say, let's hold on and pause before we start getting rid of actual bodies who can help understand and provide the judgment needed with the artificial intelligence. Because I think there's absolutely a place. Every single one of us is using AI every single day. There's a smart way to use it, but AI does not take away from the need of human intelligence and our ability to judge. And so we are going to, in that scenario where perhaps some nurses were relieved, again, I think that you have leaders who are being a little too proactive and maybe relieving people, but some of them also, by other decision makers, are having to figure out how to manage the resources they have. And that's the challenges with leadership, is figuring out how to manage that when the resources seem to get depleted more and more and more.
And to add to those challenges, the responsibility of growing future leaders. So could you just speak to the responsibility of senior leaders?
Absolutely. When it comes to nurses, I think I read recently that 1 million RNs at the age of 50 and older plan to retire within the next 5 years. That's a big deal. And I hope they're not all in this room. Some of y'all are like, yes, me. So that is why, I was talking to Dr. Toussaint when we were talking about pipelines, and it doesn't matter if it's for the Nurse Corps, for the United States military, for Apple, Google, Amazon, it doesn't matter. Every single leader in here, our 30 and up crowd, 40 and up crowd especially, we have a responsibility to grow our successors. It is not about us. It is about the greater cause. In fact, I had dinner with some of my Columbia Southern University teammates and Dr. Toussaint, and we were talking about the blessings of being this age, because at this point in life, it is about growing other leaders. It is about getting more rooms in the back, more tables in the back, fired up about what they're doing. And half of the people that go on that cruise next year should be your under 30 crowd. Because when you get them excited and fired up, you're going to be able to start to populate that 1 million gap. If you just assume that recruiting will be fine and attrition's gonna be fine and we'll figure it out, that is not true. Every interaction that you have with somebody as a leader is developing somebody and helping to create energy and excitement. And oh, by the way, every single one of you is a recruiter. Every single one of you is a recruiter for the Nurse Corps. So how you do that is extremely important.
Yep. I hope all of you were listening. We have a couple of questions here. When I asked for questions earlier, she was the first to stand up from the back, so I will yield to her.
I just want to make sure you're retired, right?
Yes.
Because my question is from near and dear to my heart. Has the challenge for women and Asians to succeed in the military increased in the current political climate?
I would say that it has, right? But here's what I will offer. As a military leader, we are apolitical and we don't get involved in that at all. What I've seen throughout my career, every 4 years, it goes like this. The majority of your military members, by the way, don't care because we're all in the middle. All we care about is how do we lead, how do we execute our mission, and how do we stay connected as a military family. I have no idea your political affiliation, and I don't care. I have no idea who you're married to. I care about you as an individual. I want you to thrive, but we don't care about those things. It is unfortunate that right now, but again, we've had other administrations that have equally been, strong in their views. We are experiencing some challenges, and that's fine. We work past those challenges. We keep strong people of character in our organization, and we power through. Because in a few more years, it's going to come to this. So it goes back to focusing on what you can control and work on that. And so when I have women who approach me in the military or minorities who say, hey chief, it's really hard right now, I don't disagree that it is, but I need you to stay strong. I need you to be a person of character. I need you to lead well because people are watching you. And for me personally, people joke and say, hey Chief, you might have been out of the military if that happened, but you know what? I would go out doing what I do and what I love.
We have time for one more question before we wrap this up.
Aloha, Auntie Joe. I'm from Hawaii. I'm Mary Kay Axon Armstrong. I'm an associate professor at Shanghai University of Honolulu. So my question is something that I've been pondering upon for many, many years. What are the barriers and challenges you had as you move up in the change of command, being an Asian? Please share with us how you prepared yourself with those who lack confidence with your leadership.
I'm not trying to be funny, but I've made a lot of lumpia, so I didn't have that many challenges. No, I did. I actually feel like that if I had to look back at my career, most of the challenges were, if I had any, were perhaps because I was a woman, more than because of my age. I think that being an Asian, personally and at the core of who I am, helped me because I grew up with some strong Asian parents who don't play. And that and hard work. So that was the foundation that I think helped me. And my parents taught me, you shake the dust off. You don't make decisions based on how you feel. You know, you just power through. I think that helped me. Now, did others maybe see things in a different way? Maybe, but I can't worry about that. I have to be focused on, you know, the things that I'm focused on, which is why I always tell people to play the long game. What I learned early on through the challenges that maybe I had is I learned the power of mindset and how you frame things. And so if I frame things early on, which I did as a younger airman, I would always think, oh, woe is me, look at all these challenges. When I changed my mindset and said, the challenges are opportunities. And those opportunities help you grow. And when you can learn from those opportunities, you can create opportunities, you don't let anybody stop you. And what I learned is my greatest glass ceiling, so to speak, was not other people, it was my own self-limiting beliefs. And so when I learned that hey, you're actually a badass in your own right, then the sky was the limit. So I tell people all the time, don't let your own self-limiting beliefs keep you from where you're supposed to go.
And before we wrap it up, wrapping it up, I have a couple of rapid fire questions here for Joe. Right, about 7 of them. One leadership trait that cannot be compromised.
Competence. You gotta know your job.
A book or resource that has influenced your leadership journey.
I already told y'all one of them. What got you here won't get you there. There's a new book out. Gosh, I've been giving it out to everybody. I'm looking at Bonnie like, which? Oh, there they are. Good. Let them. Okay, have y'all read that? If you're a parent, you need to read that book. And if you get frustrated with your coworkers, hey, how many of y'all get frustrated with your coworkers? You better read that book. And if you get frustrated with your spouse, my husband always looks at me and says, let them. Hey, the other thing I'll tell you, and please check these out and connect with me on LinkedIn. If you lead Gen Z, or if you have children who are Gen Z, you've got to read Generation Z Unfiltered. It'll change your perspective, and the Anxious Generation. You know, when we talk about mental health challenges, and we certainly talk about them all the time in the military, I can sit in a room or a hangar with 2,000 service members, and mental health is going to come up. Gen Z Unfiltered helped me understand that because You know, it used to be back in the day, we used to call each other helicopter parents. That is not what we are anymore. Now we're called snowplow parents. What's a snowplow do? Moves. We are raising children to never experience life. They never experience heartache. They're working later in life. They're living with their parents later in life. They're dating later in life. Like, I'm watching it in my own children. My youngest daughter had her first boyfriend at 17. I had my first boyfriend at 8. Like, it's... I had my first breakup at 8. You know, so these kids today are breaking up at age 20, 21, 22, and they're crushed. Or they go to nursing school for the first time and they fail and they're crushed. So read those. Read all these books. They're good. And nurses especially, put on your oxygen mask first. Do not feel guilty about taking care of you. You are the caregivers. And so if you are pouring from an empty cup, it doesn't work. So you have to take care of yourself physically, spiritually, socially, mentally. Do not be apologetic about it. Take care of you.
Amazing. Read my list. Best advice you ever received?
Do your job, do what?
Leadership myth that you would like to dispel.
That we can do everything on our own, right? Like people tell you, you gotta be good. Nobody wins by themselves. It takes a team to do it. Make your team strong.
One habit that has contributed most to your success.
Waking up early. Hey, I love to sleep. I love to sleep, and I hit the snooze button when I was young in life, but when I became a leader, I learned that I have to discipline myself, and if I wake up early, I can pour into myself by listening to podcasts, by going to work out, by eating healthy. So you gotta, if you're a leader, you gotta work out, you gotta eat, you gotta read.
What does service mean to you today?
I think everybody has an opportunity to serve. It just means doing something greater than yourself, serving your community, serving your school, serving in your associations. Serve.
And last, finish the sentence. Influence at scale begins with
Every single one of the people in this room. We want to change our association. We want to change our hospitals. We want to change the world. That's it.
I will go and stand innovation.
He did good, right? He got the point.
So the goal for this talk was for us to stop communication effort. Most of the nursing conferences, we invite nurses, nurse executives, nurse leaders. And I said, I want somebody here who's not a nurse, who can show us what leadership is outside of nursing, and you delivered perfectly. Thank you, Dr. Sargent, JOANNE. We love it. It's super